Hello, once again. Welcome to Kardec Radio. This is Spiritism, a closer look. I'm Luiz Lima, your host for tonight, broadcasting from Orlando, Florida. And tonight we are going to take a closer look at psychometry. The word itself, by the way, has different meanings depending on, uh, what subject is being, I would say, put in focus. So we need to make sure we understand this according to the Spiritist definition. So let's be clear on a few things. Before we go into the Spiritist definition per se, a general description of, or a general definition, let's put it this way, of what is psychometry. We can take it from like Wikipedia, for example, very popular description or definition, and they will say it's a form of extrasensory perception. So it has to do with mediumship, a form of extrasensory perception characterized by the claimed ability to glean accurate knowledge of an object's history by making physical contact with that object. So it's the ability that certain people, mediums, have, that they will touch a certain object and they are able to pull out the history, if you will, of that object. That's a broad definition. It's again from Wikipedia. Now, let's go into one of the definitions in Spiritism. I'm going to give you two. They are actually the same, using different words. One is, a little bit more complicated than the other because it is a complicated subject. So I'm going to put here for you on your screen the definition from this book here, The Mechanics of Mediumship by Spirit Andre Luiz. This is what it says. In mediumistic circles, psychometry is defined as the extrasensory ability to perceive the perceive the hidden side of the surroundings. This is interesting. The hidden side of the surroundings, and to read impressions and memories by handling objects and documents. It's a little bit extensive, but that's what it is. The ability that certain people have to touch objects and documents, and they are able to perceive the hidden side using their extrasensory ability. That's one definition. The same spirit, Andre Luiz, will give us a little bit simpler definition in this book here, in the realms of mediumship. And you can see the definition down on the bottom of your screen. It's the faculty of reading impressions and memories by touching ordinary objects. It's a very straightforward, very simple definition. So it is a challenging for us to understand how does it happen? How can such a thing take place? We're not going to go into the physics of it because it's complicated. You would require a lot more time than what we have here in the program. But we're going to go a little deeper into the concept. Let me tell you this. If I give you, for example, let's say you are in the room of your house, one of the rooms in your house. Then you go to the very corner, okay, on the floor on the corner. If I give you 3 dimensions from that point, you will locate yourself. So if I tell you, for example, from the corner on the floor of your room, go up 3 feet. Okay, so you go up 3 feet, then come to the left 4 feet, then come to the right, for example, 1 foot. So I'll give you the 3 coordinates that locates a point into the room. And that's a very easy thing. All you have to do is measure the 3 dimensions from that point of reference, and you will get to that point. And you can tell me, the point, this is right on part of my desk, for example. Now, what if I give you the same 3 coordinates and I ask you, locate this point, and you locate the point, and I give you, but I want this in 1975. That complicates everything because In our space-time world, we don't have three variables, we have four. So how can I tell you what was there in 1975? I can't. But that's the incredible ability that these mediums have, because the time space variable, which is the fourth variable in our material physical world, it does not exist in the spirit world. They don't need the time. They can get, to the place anywhere in time. So without going into this because it's complicated, I just wanted to throw that in, so we can start the discussion. All right, let me go through a few things. In order for psychometry to take place, three things are needed: a medium, an object, and the information you're looking for. You want to touch that object for a reason. So, what kind of information am I looking for? What kind of information am I trying to extract from that touching that object? So, this is a process for the medium to be able to do all of this. And we can tell the phases of the process without digging in very deeply. Like I said, it's complicated. We have to do this it takes time to get it done. So the medium has to first be concentrated in order to do this. Andre Luiz uses the word conditioned reflex. So he has to be concentrated, meaning using his cortex. So it depends on having a cortex. It's not something intuitive. No, it depends on having a cortex. So the medium will concentrate. The next step, once he's concentrated and feeling, concentrated enough, he will like advance to the next phase, which is the psychic forces will separate from the vital centers. Yeah, the forces, the psychic mental forces will separate, drift apart from the vital centers. Vital centers are also called chakras. So it's like, imagine, for example, if we could imagine visually uh, something like this. When you see an astronaut on the moon, they have to walk really slow, because if they do too fast, they kind of detach from the soil. They will come back. That why they detach, because the gravity is not the same, so it's easy to detach. It's the same thing here. When the medium is concentrated to that point that he can detach himself, and the psychic forces will separate from the vital centers. When that happens, the vital centers are free. There's a transfer of potentialities. The five senses that we have are transferred to, the perispirit, which is detaching from the body. So there's some sort of a delegation here. Instead of using my eyes, now I'm going to use the eyes of my perispirit. Instead of using my ears, I'm going to use the ears of the perispirit. So there's some sort of delegation. It's similar to a process like hypnotism. It uses the same thing, uses the same method for this, quote, detaching. As it happens more and more, it increases the sensitivity of the medium. So he is able to, like if he had bigger ears, if you will, or better vision, as the process goes, they will gain a tremendous level of sensitivity. And then the next thing is the spiritual body disengages, and it blends into the spiritual realm. So it is as if that medium was discarnated at this point. So now he is, or the spirit is, among all the spirits in the spirit world. And that will allow the medium to follow through what needs to be done to get the impressions on that object and the information on it. One thing that is interesting is this: how does he know what to do after that point? There's a couple of things to be considered. First, usually the medium is guided by his mentor, his, the whoever spirit usually works with him on things like this. So once he's out, once the spiritual body is disengaged, the mentor will take the medium's perispirit where it needs to go. That's why it's important for the medium to concentrate, to be extremely concentrated, so his mentor will approach and be with him when he detaches, when he disengages. So usually this is what happens. And then the medium, which is now no longer a person, it's a spirit out there after disengagement, it will be in touch with other spirits, including, for example, the spirit who owns the object, or he possessed the object at a certain time. That's how that's how they get to where they need to be to receive the information, which we use the word impressions. Receive the impressions from that object or document. So it's a very interesting process, and it takes time in the beginning when the mediums who are prone to psychometry, there's a lot of practice in the beginning. They will get better and better and better. When I mean gets better, means two things: they will disengage faster because they are so used to that, and they will delegate more to the perispirit. They will, as if they were more detached from the spiritual body, so they can have better results in the overall process of bringing information and the impressions that were left by whoever possessed it. And again, it doesn't matter, time doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if the object was built, manufactured, created, written 200 years ago, 300 years ago. It doesn't really matter because at this point, the medium's perispirit does not depend or is not even in the physical uh, but the physical realm. So time space do not apply anymore. So there are several different cases of, for example, things about jewelry. You know, people who had possessed jewelry centuries ago, and jewelry right now it's somewhere else. General objects like clocks and furniture, clothing, a lot of things. So there are very interesting stories. I'm going to bring you one which is narrated by Andre Luiz in one of the books that I showed you. This one here, in the realms of mediumship. It's a very interesting, very touching story, and it all starts in 1791 when France was still going through the French Revolution, and because of the French Revolution, a lot of people uh, they just had to flee the country. So this couple flees to Brazil with their young boy. So now they're living in Brazil, in the city of Rio de Janeiro in Brazil, with their young boy. This boy grows and becomes a man. He meets a girl, still all in Brazil, and they become engaged. By then, when they became engaged, in France, Napoleon was in power, and the political situation in France changed, and it became more friendly for that couple to return home with their son, who is now a man. He was grown up already. And, his father and his mother tell his son, we're going to go back. And he kind of didn't want to do it because he was engaged to a girl, but, he decided to obey and just left the country back to France. But before that, he goes to the girl he was engaged to, and he gave her a small mirror and said, I want you to keep this mirror until I return, because when I return, we are going to get married and we're going to live happily ever after. So the girl gets the mirror, holds onto it, and he leaves. The boy leaves. He gets back in France and he laid eyes on another woman, and everything changes because now He forgot about the girl in Brazil and the promises and all of that. It's all gone now. The girl doesn't know, so she holds on to the mirror for as long as she can. Long story short, the mirror makes its way into a museum, actually a gallery, and it's there. And Spirit Andre Luis comes to tell us that he's discarnated, right? He was with a team of discarnated spirits in that gallery, in that museum, watching what happened because they were following their instructor. Their instructor was gonna uh, show them how psychometry works. So they are watching, and somebody approaches that mirror. When somebody approaches that mirror, the person who approaches, the physical person in the gallery, has like a bad, strange, weird feeling, and that person just leaves. She goes, "Oh, this place is not for me." She leaves. And then the instructor, Andre Luis instructor, explains that what that person felt was the presence of the girl telling that person, "This mirror is mine. Don't touch my stuff." So for the medium, these objects, when they see these things, they're very like this fluidic white streak, white cloud kind of thing. That's what they are for the mediums. And for the girl or the owner, the old owner, whoever possessed it, it's the object as it was before. These people are still going through the emotions that this girl, for example, she's still going through the emotions and everything that the mirror meant. The mirror for her didn't mean something to, just put your lipstick and so. No, it had a history with a lot of emotions, a lot of ups and downs on emotions because she loved the girl, the boy had to leave, and so the there's a lot of emotions in there. And the person who was visiting the gallery was most likely a medium or had a great degree of sensitivity, and he felt all of that and got panicked and left. So the uh, mediums, a lot of mediums don't like very much going into museums, antique art, antique galleries, because depending on how sensitive they are, they don't feel well. They feel like, something strange. They feel out of place, and it becomes a little bit complicated. So a lot of mediums don't like to go to these places because they don't feel comfortable. That's the word. They don't feel, although they might know exactly why they feel that way, but still they feel not comfortable. So you don't want to be in a place that you're not comfortable all the time. On the other hand, for the medium who is touching the objects to get all the information, the emotions of that medium, yeah, that medium has to be extremely concentrated, and I would even say trained to do this properly because the emotions of the medium might contaminate the object and erase the impressions that were in there, which were emotions related impressions. So it's not an easy thing for the medium also. They have to be very, very, very careful. But this is a story that it's narrated in the book, and I just thought it was very interesting for us to bring it over here for discussion. By the way, on the book itself, this book here, In the Realms of Mediumship, there's a whole chapter about psychometry. It's worth reading. It's very interesting. Now let's move on to something else. This is what psychometry is. Now there are some practical uses of psychometry. The ability to this day, it is used for something that matters. A few examples. Historical value of objects. This is called psychic archaeology. So, archaeology researches objects, and they find things. They find things. At times, things that are found do not kind of relate to anything that is known, or It could be, one thing or another, but they are completely different. And they will use mediums which are, specialized in psychometry, to be able to obtain information on those historic objects. Another practical use of psychometry is criminal investigations of missing people. How many missing people we have out there? Unfortunately, it does happen everywhere in the world. And at times, criminal investigations, they find objects that the person left behind. For example, at the time of an abduction, or the car they were in when they were taken, something like that. So mediums with the ability will be able to, touch those objects and find where these people are, where they were taken. Sometimes, they are out of state, out of country, but this is also used for criminal investigations. It is also used, for example, in commercial practices and interests. For example, let's say that I need to know where uh, petroleum is, or where gold is. So before digging in and investing a lot of time and effort and money, and so if we can get if we can get a medium that is able to tell us, there's nothing here, it's in another place, they will be able to pinpoint places where whatever I'm looking for could be. So a lot of these commercial companies, they use mediums, psychometry mediums, to find, metals and location of certain things. And here's another interesting story. It's a story by a great medium, Brazilian medium called Ivone Pereira. She she wrote several books, but there's one story that's interesting. It's not on any book. She discarnated a few decades ago. When she was alive in her last incarnation, something happened, and everybody like was surprised. She was invited to spend the weekend in a farm because their friends and family and people she knew, they were gonna celebrate something, and she was invited. And she said, "Yeah, no, of course I'll go." So she went in, and the party goes on, and everything is good. And then, night falls, and it's kind of time to sleep. So they allocated rooms for all the guests, and they told her, "You're going to sleep in this particular place here." It was a little house on the side of the farm. They had several houses. So people were going to sleep in those little houses. So they told her, "This is your house." And she was a medium, like incredibly sensitive. And she goes into the house, and she starts, lays down to sleep, and starts feeling very uncomfortable, very, very uncomfortable, to the point that she would just stand up, and go around, left and right, pacing. She was feeling very bad. And then in the middle of the night, she packs her things and leaves. Next day, they wake up, she's not there, but she gets in touch with them. And she says, "I had to leave because I was incredibly touched by that place." And they ask her, "Why?" And she said, "Because I have the ability for psychometry. And in that room that you put me in, where was the room where the slaves got killed by the farm owners 200 years ago." And she said, I'm there, and I'm feeling death and blood and all of that. I'm reliving all these death, and I had to leave. I couldn't stay. So you see, that's again the ability of psychometry, which is, it's not every medium that has the ability, but when they do, it's very interesting, very incredible. So what do we take home from this? What do we take home from this? For us, Spiritists in particular, the understanding of psychometry, the process, and what it means, indicates how much attachment to the material possessions can lead to a disembodied spirit that is going to experience immense difficulty to disengage from personal objects and possessions of their incarnated life. So, people who are very attached to material, to possessions, they will die, they will discarnate, and they still think they are alive and they still think they own those objects and they stick to it. It's like if they had their hand on the object all the time, even after their death. So they think it's theirs. That's why the story that I told you about the museum and objects in art galleries, it's not uncommon to find situations like this. And that's the reason, once again, why very sensitive people don't like to go to places like that because they feel, the they're being like there's a dispute for who owns the object. You're putting your hand on my object. So it's an interesting topic. There's a lot to explain this in details, exactly how it happens. We wouldn't have to go into physics, very high end physics and quantum physics, which is not the purpose here. We're just, uh, you know, touching bases to give you what psychometry is, what it does, and it's still something that has a use, has it's being used still today by companies and and the situation that we gave you here. So it's a very interesting topic. I agree with Vanessa. Great topic, and it's something that we have to study and keep studying. It never ends, and the more we study, especially now with how advanced physics and quantum physics are, the more we study, the more we find. It becomes even more challenging and it's a beautiful study. But anyway, for us, Spiritists, psychometry is what we try to put in here in these 30 minutes that we have. So thank you very much for joining us. And don't forget, every Wednesday, 7 p.m., we are here with Spiritism, a closer look via Kardec Radio. I'll see you next time. Thank you very much. Be well.